Hi, gorgeous sis. Good morning. Welcome to the morning show. I am your host, Marley Ansel at Ansel on the Instagrams, and this is the morning show where you come to get your daily dose of inspiration and level up into your highest being. And today we are doing Q&A, my favorite day. Normally we do Q&A on Fridays, but this stepmama, is attending a very prestigious elementary school graduation on Fridays. My oldest is graduating from elementary school. So Friday, there will be no morning show. So we're doing our Q&A today. So good morning. Welcome. We love some Q&A. How are you feeling? How is your Wednesday? Say hello as you're jumping on. As always, we have some questions lined up. We have some really good submissions that came through the website. But if you have something that pops up for you along the way, feel free to drop it in the comments. We will cover as much as we can with the time that we have. All right, so before we dive in, I do want to tell you guys about this because I just discovered this in the cosmos that's happening right now in conjunction with our new moon. So for those of you who don't know, there's a new moon in Gemini tomorrow morning. But alongside this new moon, it is conjunct Venus. So you've got moon happening tomorrow, but right now we have Sun and Venus are literally on top of each other. So what this means is that the energies of Venus, which is our feminine energy, our goddess energy, all things beauty, all things value, our money, our self-worth, all of these beautiful aspects of Venus are amplified by the sun right now. So they are in what's called a cazimi, which means they're right next to each other. And then when the moon comes in, it'll be the cazimi. So it's starting a new cycle. Venus is starting a new 4-year cycle, and you have the new moon that's starting a new cycle. So we've got a whole lot of new energy happening here, all really beautiful aspects. So you want to look at your chart and see where the Gemini new moon energy is for you, because this is initiating a new cycle, and all at the energy of Venus, which is our self-worth, our value, our money, our material possessions, the things that we value. It's really beautiful energy. So with a new cycle initiating, that also means that an old cycle is completing. Let's get excited, okay? Because the last 4 years, you tell me if this is true for you, but the last 4 years have been lessons, according to Venus, lessons in our self-worth, lessons around our money, lessons around shifting priorities and what we value. Instagram with the dramatics. All of these we've been going through 4 years of deep dive personal self-worth and things we value lessons. So there's a cycle completing with that. Venus has been around the block. She has gone and gathered the things that we needed in order to step fully into our worth, in order for us to start owning what it is that matters to us, our values, our priorities. And so now we're initiating a new cycle. So I want you to think about this like you have some things under your belt now that you didn't have before. You have a new level of self-worth that you didn't have before. You have new standards around what matters to you that you didn't have before. Your values have been repositioned. Think about this in terms for yourself. For me, this is so true. Now, granted, you guys know, I became a stepmom in the last 5 years, but 4 years is when I really started stepping into that role. My values are entirely different than they used to be. Now my values center around time. Well, I've always valued my time, my God. But being present, having time to be a present parent, having the time to do the fun family things, being able to prioritize my day so that I am putting first the priorities that actually matter to me. Like everything has changed in the last 4 years. So all of that is to say, we have a new cycle initiating. It's very exciting. Get clear on what this means for you. Amen. Okay, so let's dive in before we get too chatty. We have a few question submissions. We're going to cover as much as we can. So if you don't hear your question today, don't get disheartened. Your question will likely be read on a future Q&A. So feel free to always submit your questions. I will always get to whatever it is that we can get to. Okay, let's see. So this is an interesting question. And let's dive into it because I think I understand it and I like it. By the way, good morning, gorgeous. Our first question says, how do you quiet the voice in your mind when it comes to fortune telling? Now, a little context. When something new is happening in my life, my mind swirls with fake plans or expectations. Sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. I love this. So essentially what it sounds like to me is you're asking about premonitions. Like you have this new thing that's happening in your life and the mind does what it does. It likes to go off and create story this way or that way. This might happen, that might happen, all of the things. Typically, our mind, lovely as it is, likes to go with the doomsday scenarios, right? But here's how it actually works. Whenever you are entering something new, there is a certain level of momentum in the frequency that you're on. So again, remembering frequency is like floors in a building, different levels of reality. Every little millimeter shift that you make in your belief system, in your thoughts, in your feelings, is going to shift you into a different frequency. It's going to shift you into a different floor of the building. So, in the example that we always give, is I want you to imagine, because most people are living in one level of reality. So, that would be like you're on floor one, but you're wanting to be on floor two. You're wanting a different experience of reality. Most people spend their whole life trying to fix up and clean floor one, hoping somehow it will magically transform into floor two. Doesn't work that way, does it? We have to leave floor one, enter into the unknown, and go towards something new if we want to experience something new. So this looks like you've got to really self-assess your current belief system, your current way of being, your current way of thinking, and it all comes down to who you believe you are and what you believe is possible for you. Everything comes down to this: who you believe you are, your identity at your core, and what you believe is possible for you. Those two things are dictating your entire life. So when we start to shift, even a tiny 1 millimeter shift, one of those things, you're going to start to see a change in your reality. And this is when you start to experience something new. Now, our ego does not really love newness. It starts to freak out, right? And then that's when the mind goes on overdrive with the potential disaster scenarios that could happen. But sometimes you are also getting sort of a premonition feel. This has been happening for me specifically a lot more in this past year. It's like I see scenarios in my mind and then they end up happening. Or I understand if I do A and B, it's going to generate C. And it's not simple like if I get up and go get some water, I will have water in my cup. It's not like that. It's like interacting with other people. Like I can see something in my mind, very like premonition like, that this is going to happen if I follow the momentum of what is. Momentum is the key word here. You are always operating in a momentum. And sometimes you get premonitions of what is going to occur if you stay in that same momentum. So, an example, your mind is always trying to predict the future. Bless it. It cannot, but it's always trying, right? And so you will see scenarios in your mind that you will start kind of preparing for. You've done this. Stick with me. Listen to this. Whenever you are moving towards something, you're going to have fears around it, right? Whether we like it or not, there's going to be things that you potentially fear, and you're going to have a goal. There's something you want to happen. There's something you fear to happen. How many times do you sit there and play out the fear of the thing that you don't want to happen in your mind? How many times do you do that? You're sitting there prepping, literally prepping for what you don't want. So, in a very practical example, because I work with so many clients who run an online business, they sit there and they prepare for no one to join their program or course, or for only one person to join their program of course, meaning they sit there and they're like, what am I going to do if no one buys this? What am I going to do if only one person joins it? And they're mentally preparing for the outcome that they don't want versus mentally preparing for the outcome that they do want. Okay, so here's why it matters. When you're operating in one frequency of reality, one momentum, you are moving towards that momentum whether you're trying or not. So, meaning if you're in the momentum of preparing for what you don't want to happen, you're thinking about what am I going to do if this happens, then you are steadily moving towards that momentum. So, here's the thing, momentum never stops. It's not like you can stop that momentum of that happening. You have to leave that momentum and start to initiate a new momentum. Does this make sense? So we have to get clear, okay, here's the momentum I'm on. And these are the premonition thoughts that are coming into your mind. So I'm talking about premonition thoughts, though. I'm not talking about irrational fears. Okay, irrational fears are a totally different ballgame. They are not the same. But if you are receiving and thinking about and preparing for something that you don't actually want to happen, that is universal guidance showing you this is the momentum you're on. If you keep focusing on this, if you keep staying in this same momentum, this is what's going to happen. It's almost like showing you the future if you continue on this same momentum, because the future is not yet created. There's an infinite number of potentialities that you could move into, but it's like it's showing you this is where you are. And if you stay in this momentum, this is where you're going. That is the point at which you have the opportunity to decide, is that the outcome that I actually want? Now, most people, and no shame in your game if this is you, because we've all done it, most people, when they have that premonition of like, this is the momentum that I'm working to or I'm moving towards, most people get really, really fearful of the outcome and they start panicking and trying to react to prevent it, but then they feel like they absolutely cannot do anything to prevent it. I'm going to tell you how to change it. Okay, you guys ready? You're with me? This is so great because this is something I was going to bring to my mastermind today anyway, so I will be prepped. So when you are on one frequency of momentum, do you guys know what I mean when I say that? Like, you guys know what momentum feels like. You do one thing, you do the next thing, you're believing this about yourself and you're believing this about who you are, and it feels inevitable that that outcome is going to happen regardless if you want it or not. You know what I mean by that? So when you realize that that's the momentum that you're in, what you've got to do is recognize that your spirit guide, higher self, God, whatever you speak and pray to, is showing you this is the outcome of that momentum if you stay on this momentum. This is the point at which you have the opportunity to shift your momentum. This is where it gets cool. Okay, so once you recognize that the scene playing out in your mind over and over and over is a future potentiality that you don't want, then you have to stop everything for a moment and recognize, I don't actually want that to happen. And so then it gives you the opportunity to get clear on what you do want to happen. So in that moment, you've got to decide, okay, what is it that I actually want? What is it that what's the future outcome that I would like to create? And as soon as you recognize that, get as specific as you can because it's going to help you out. And get what you can get behind. An example, in our floor metaphor, if you're on floor, we'll put you on floor 2. If you're on floor 2, you've got access to you've got access to floor 1 if you want to downshift. Don't recommend it. Or you have access to probably floor 3 or floor 4. You don't have access to floor 10. You don't even know what floor 10 exists at this point. So what I mean by that is like, in a practical, silly example of like money, it's like if you are wanting to create, $15,000 this month, then shift to the 15,000 not the million, because the million is incomprehensible to your mind. Does that make sense? So you want to ask yourself, what do I actually want? And make it within range of something you can get behind. Don't make it so abstract and ethereal and full of illusion that you're like, I don't know, whatever, it's just a dream. You see what I'm saying? Make it practical. So you get clear on exactly what you do want. Once you're clear on exactly what you do want, you're gonna have some sort of belief or fear or like that's not possible come up. Guaranteed. Because if you did have a belief in it, like if you had like a of course that would happen in it, it would be happening. And this is just the most practical black and white way to really get clear and assess your belief system. If you actually believed it, it would be currently happening. But if it's not currently happening, it's not solidified in your belief system yet. So you want to get clear on what's in the way, right? So once you get clear on what you want to assess, because there's going to be something that comes up immediately every single time it happens this way. It's like, okay, well, I want this. And then immediately you're going to feel something and there's going to be a thought and it's going to be something around, well, that's not possible for me, or that's not possible right now, or whatever it is. You want to get clear on what that belief system is. You're going to take that belief system through the belief rewiring work. This is what I teach inside the programs. This is what I teach inside. You guys remember Becoming a Conscious Creator? We talked about that for months, that program on how to rewire your subconscious, which, by the way, if you sign up for the free 30-day morning routine to change your life, you just might have a code for 50% off that program. So you do the work to rewire the subconscious around that belief system that's preventing you from having what you want. We can never create or act outside of our belief system. Okay, so once you have that belief checked, locked in at I am now behind this 100%, my mind is behind me having the outcome that I want. I can see it. I believe in it. It feels like ease. It feels smooth as butter. Like I got it. Then you're going to ask yourself, what action do I want to create? What action do I want to take to align with and create this outcome? Do you notice that I said, what action do you want to take? Not what action should you take? What action do you want to take? Because if you are still in the what actions I should be taking, you do not believe in it yet. You feel me on that? You do not believe in it yet because you're making yourself wrong, that you're not doing what you should be doing to get what it is that you want. If you are mindset, belief, thought, feeling aligned with the outcome that you want, there's no should. There's only inspired action. It only is like, oh, well, this sounds fun. Well, that sounds fun. Oh, I can do this, that, I can go after that. Let's do that. It's not going to feel like you're having to force yourself to do something. If you feel like you're having to force yourself to do something, you're still working against a belief. Once your beliefs are in place, the actions will feel like ease. The actions are actually the easiest part. Actions are not hard, like logically, practically, okay? I'm live with you guys here now 3 times a week. The action is type the title, hit the live button, talk. That's not hard, right? That's not hard. What's the hard part? The hard part would be if I had a belief system in place that said, nobody wants to hear me anyway. I'm not good enough to do this. What if it's a disaster? What if I stumble and then I embarrass the hard part is the belief. The hard part is the mind. Once you have the mind on board with the outcome that you desire, the actions are seamless. They are easy. So you want to ask yourself, what's the action that I want to take? And you're going to have some beautiful things come to your mind. Trust it. Trust it. So now do you see how we've shifted the momentum? Isn't that cool? We've shifted the momentum away from unconsciously preparing for a disaster scenario that you don't want to consciously moving towards the outcome that you do want. And we started with getting clear on what you want. bringing up the belief systems that are in place that have maybe said that's not possible, or it's not possible for me, or it's not possible right now. We do the belief work. Again, you guys can get into becoming a conscious creator to get that program on how to do this work. And then you start to ask yourself, what action do I want to take to create this? Do you see how all of that momentum going this way towards something you don't want just suddenly went whoop? And it's not big. It's a small shift that will move you in a totally different direction towards what you actually do want. So this is the magic of getting really conscious with your intention, because we are setting intentions all the time, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. We're setting intention all the time, and we can be unconsciously creating our reality with lazy intention that's just kind of like, oh, that's going to our default subconscious program. And if we have not done that work to rewire the subconscious to a more empowered state, then we are defaulting to the unconscious state of whatever we were programmed with growing up, which for a lot of us, we have a lot of unconscious programming from when we were a kid that says like, oh, you're not enough, or you're too much, or you should be this, or you should be that, and you're whatever. We have a lot of that. All of it's with purpose. We were meant to have it because we had to use it to develop our character to grow into who we're meant to be. But if you don't get conscious about it, it's going to run your life, and then you're going to call it fate. That's just truth. So you can shift the momentum. I hope that answered the question. I feel like it did. I feel like I kind of gather what you're saying here. So let me know if that was your question. Let me know if that answered it for you. Okay, we're going to do one more if I can make it quick. And then, as always, let me know in the comments what resonates with you, what stands out to you. Okay, so there's two actually on here. Let me read them both and see which one I want to go with. I think they kind of are the same question, honestly. Okay, I'm going to read them both and we're going to see where it goes. How to tap into creative potential via content when it feels like the well has gone dry, / how to begin to create content after not creating in ages and it feels like a huge hurdle to start again, parentheses, in deep freeze response. Okay. Yeah, I think these are the same. Okay. So the deep freeze response stands out to me for a couple things. If you are truly in deep freeze, then you are in survival mode. Deep freeze is a feeling that I am at threat, like my being is at threat, right? So we go into, for those who don't know, you go into fight, freeze, or fawn. No, fight, freeze. I can't remember now. Fight, we'll just go with fight or freeze. Oh, fight, flight, or freeze. That's right. Fight, flight, or freeze, brain turning on. So when you go into survival mode, you go into three. You fight, you flight, or you freeze. So in that state of survival, what's happening energetically is you are more concerned about the survival of the 3D human than you have the ability to be in spirit and connect. So whenever the being feels at threat, this is why healing your trauma is so, so important. Whenever the being feels at threat, you're cut off from your divine higher connection. Creation or creativity is the God force. So when we are in creative mode, we are literally operating as our God selves. We are in creation. We're connected to the divine. We're connected to our higher state of being. Creation is divinity. Being in creation is you being in your God self. So when you're in survival, for whatever reason, whatever has happened, be it something from your past that's trauma that's playing out, or something that's happening currently and you feel at threat, it cuts off your connection to creation. Because it's not like you did something wrong. It's that everything prioritizes survival. So if there is a feeling that you are at threat, it's like there's no time for creativity here. We've got to get the human back into safety. So if you are experiencing deep freeze response, your main priority is to get back into safety. Now, I don't know the context behind what's happening in your life. If there is something actually dangerous, I think it goes without saying, you've got to get your physical self into safety, right? If you have like a home environment that's not safe or whatever it is. If it is energetic, emotional, meaning that it is just a response that you are feeling like you don't have, like you're not enough, or that it all comes down to not enough, doesn't it? Like if your deep freeze survival thought is around your worthiness and not enoughness, then there is an energetic healing that needs to happen between you and you. So we can't create content in the sense of creating it for others if we're feeling at threat ourselves and we're not feeling whole within our own being. I mean, you could, it's just going to be really difficult and it's not going to come out the right way that you want it to. So my first question would be like, one, why is creating content right now so important? And I ask that not because like to say it's not important, but for you to get clear on where that like anxious feeling is coming from. Because what I pick up on in the question is like, I've got to create content because if I don't create content, then fill in the blank. There's some sort of survival thing happening right there. And so if you ask yourself that question, it's going to help you to get clear on what it is that actually needs healing inside of you, because that's where that response is coming from. Does that make sense? And then there was something else I wanted to say with this. What was it? Robert's dad used to always say, you can't write poetry in an alligator pit, which is so funny, but I think it perfectly explains when you're in survival mode. You can't be creative in survival mode. You got to just you got to survive. You've got to get back to safety. So number one is getting back to safety, whether that's physical, emotional, energetically, or spiritual. You got to get back to safety. The next part of it that you might be experiencing is you might be going through a deep identity death and rebirth. And what I mean by that is like, if you used to be able to create content really easily, and then in the past, past few months, maybe even into years, depending on where you are, it's been hard. It's been like what used to work doesn't work anymore. What used to light you up doesn't light you up anymore. What used to make you excited feels like work, feels hard, feels heavy. You might be going through what I call an identity death, which essentially is an old version of you is completing their cycle and a new version is asking to be born. And so if you continue to try to do things in the way of the old way, it's going to get increasingly harder. It's just not going to work. And then that's going to, of course, bring up fear inside your body, which then will put you in that survival freeze response because the identity that you were is literally dying. And that stimulates the ego to respond in survival. So if you can be aware, and I have, we did on the morning show, I gave the process of what happens in an identity death. So I'll see if I can find that episode. I can't remember what number it is, but the title probably gives it away. Go and watch that episode. Because in this time period, if there is a version of you that's completing her cycle, and now you're stepping into a new version, in that in between, if you don't understand what's happening, it will put you in a graspy survival state because you're like, this used to work for me. I've just got to get back to where I was. Like, I used to be able to do this and it used to be so easy and blah, 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 blah. And then if it's not, then you're going to find yourself going into that survival and fear state. Do you see what I'm saying? So in that process, if that's what's happening for you, you want to acknowledge that maybe what you used to do and the way you used to do it and the motivation behind how you used to do it is no longer part of who you are becoming. And so you want to let that go with grace and love. Thank you so much for being here. And then you turn towards the new level and you start to say, what would inspire me now? And there might be a little bit of like a healing on the in between, like in that void space while you're doing this work. But essentially, you have something new that's trying to ask to be born, and you want to honor that. But it might take a little bit of nurturing for it to come through. Does that make sense? Okay, I think that we did it. Thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, we do our Q&A every Friday. So if you have a question, you can submit your question to marlyansel.com/the morning show. And if you submit your question, I will get it right to my inbox. Gosh, this brain of mine is just not wanting to work. If I will get it right into my inbox. And if we don't get to your question that Friday that you submitted it, don't worry. We'll probably get to it within the following weeks. Okay. So submit your questions. We will not have the morning show this Friday, but we will be back here Monday for another episode of the morning show. All right, my loves. I love you so much. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you next week on Monday. Goodbye, my loves.